a change of things now. I've turned the vice round. And I'm putting in it an old-fashioned hook. And when I say old-fashioned, you'll not believe, well, you will believe it, because I'm going to tell you that it's a size 13.
Right.
In up until probably the end of the 1960s, it was possible to buy hooks in every single size, all made in Redditch. It was after that that things started to change drastically. So this is one of the original hooks sold by Vineyard back, well, I probably bought these in the late 50s or early 60s. And the interesting thing is that I needed to find some hooks of a particular size for one of these awards. And I thought, I've got some of that size. They go back a few years, but it doesn't matter. And I got them out. The interesting thing I found was that the gapes on the hooks going back into the 50s and 60s were a lot smaller than the ones of today. Now this size 13 would probably equate with something between a 14 and a 16 today. And the hooks we used were very much smaller in general terms. It's an interesting fact. So I'm just using this because it was a size that I used extensively. And I was never very happy with most of the patterns of flies that were printed in all the books of the day when I was young, because they nearly all, the dry flies, used wing slips from wing feathers of birds to make the wings of the flies. And I used to think, I've never seen a fly that looked like that unless it was a sedge or a moth or something with a really solid wing. So I thought, And the other thing is, nearly all the flies of the day had massive, great bushy hackles on them. And people often struck, and they missed ever so many times. They missed the rise. And I thought, no, there's something wrong here, so I'll do my own thing. So the first thing I did was to say, right, I'm going to turn the hook round, and I'm going to put the hackle on the end where it should be, which is the heavy end of the fly. And if I put the hackle there, then it's going to support the fly with many less turns. And then I thought, yeah, and I'll do something about the wing as well. So I did. And then I forget who it was, whether it was one of the well-known fly tyers of the day. He had the idea of making translucent bodies. And I thought, that's a good idea. And he used to paint the shanks of the hooks white and wrap them with horsehair. But then along came fluorescent material, DFM, daylight fluorescent material, which came into this country probably around 1948-ish. It was developed during the war by the Americans who, for visibility reasons, particularly floating objects in the sea and this sort of thing. But fly tyers took it up very quickly. So I started to combine these things together. So that's how this fly came about. And although I tied imitations of specific flies, I came to the conclusion that a lot of the time trout just were hungry and took something that looked right. Not all the time. Sometimes a specific rise and nothing but something that imitated that fly would encourage them. But this is what I tied as an all-round dark dun, and I've caught in my earlier days when I fished rivers extensively, hundreds of fish with this particular fly. So that's what I'm going to tie now. And we the slave trade had been abolished, but people, oh, you may wonder how you get all these hackles like this, but ladies sat down and they threaded each single one onto a piece of needle and cotton, and so you could buy strings of hackles like this from people like Bennions. So that's what we're talking about. So okay, we'll do something now. If I can, and so this is what I call my dark dun. It's an all-round floating fly, and I'm sure it will work just as well today as it did for me a long time ago. Last time I used it in anger was probably in the 1970s, early 80s. So, the thing about tying flies in reverse is that they definitely do require a different technique. And I am out of practice. So don't be surprised if something goes wrong. So now the first thing we need to do is to take a piece of dyed horsehair. Now, horsehair dyes quite easily, but you have to get the white translucent horsehair. But no two strands ever comes out dyed exactly the same. But this is a sort of bluey olive, for want of a different, any other suggestion. So I'm going to take a strand of that and look along it to see which end is the best colour. And I've come to the conclusion that this end is the best colour. So that's what we're going to do, and just tie that in. Like that. Now, the other thing was to take a length of fluorescent silk or floss and tie that in too at this stage. And cut off the waist. Now we're going to need a tail, so I'm going to take a few strands of feather and there again, flies don't have great big bushy tails either, but they tend to have quite significant long tails, duns do. Now at this point I don't use that green tying thread anymore. I use the fluorescent thread and hold the tail up out of the way. And take one turn underneath the tail and go back again. And if I didn't do gardening, I wouldn't have rough fingers. So there we are. That forms the body of the fly, the underbody of the fly, with white fluorescent floss. Now, we now wind the horsehair. What? Oh, bugger it. The horsehair's come out, so I'll have to start again. Sorry about that, folks. I told you something would go wrong.
That takes him 2 minutes like that. Walk back.
Sorry about that.
Mine was the one thing. I'm trying to go the opposite way.
What do you think there will be any
Teaching it how to brush and it's like-
substitutes for the horsehair?
Pardon?
Would there
How
be
do you do that, you think?
substitute for the horsehair if there any event
There must
of lack
be.
of availability, like seals?
There must
fur or
be.
something like that?
Quite easily. If I move quickly and catch the horse.
Right, okay. Okay, we will start again.
It never happens at home. It always happens to you again. That happens every week, I think.
Could you use them on a filament?
I don't know. Can you dime on a filament?
With a marking pen?
It's always been a problem with nylon and the synthetics is actually dyeing them, isn't it?
Well, you can only dye nylon under pressure.
Yes.
You know, but I mean, with a marker pen, sometimes,
Basically, I've been etching with sort of
yeah, like Copic or Sharpie,
I mean, even in the days of what they called gut substitute, it was very difficult to dye, wasn't it? So I really don't know whether, but there must be some translucent strands on the market now, surely. That
well, more to the point, is the diameter of the horsehair,
yeah.
well, to copy a diameter of the, so maybe one of these see-through, what they call it, sewing, very fine, it's a kind of a pound breaking strength or something like that.
visual prep.
Yeah,
Visual.
yeah.
Mind you, horsehair, you don't need great long lengths of it.
No, but I mean,
It's a bit from the fence.
again, unless you know somebody with horses, but otherwise you buy bundles.
Yeah, you do.
Almost,
And look at Michael's hair, that's long enough and white enough and probably translucent.
Yeah, this is something else. You can get. I bought it from a company from South Africa. They do the full range in different colour, and it's literally like
human hair.
as thick as that, but and you have it in different colour. And obviously synthetic, so the colour is applied by pressure, by. It's not made for fly tie, it's made for embroidery or because that's what they use, and I used to go around wholesale of embroidery haberdashery, and then you go there, and you can buy anything you want. Yeah, but I mean, You need to be a member. You have to have a card. You have to. But in those days, like I used to
Well,
be able to go in.
embroidery
Like,
threads at Hobbycraft, I've been looking at those, and they're
They don't
multi-threaded,
have
they're
that.
half a dozen, so no good.
you find
are
like
those?
some material from Hobbycraft is only available online.
Mhm.
Yeah, so
I just read my wife's classroom.
yeah. But a good haberdashery shop is the paradise like in a fly tire.
Yeah. Lady in the market there says, oh, so many men come
It's,
here.
again, like she's selling bread and butter stuff,
Yeah.
you know. And
You do-
she
you do
needs to
need
make
to
money,
make
not to make flies.
It's what, sorry?
Don't make money, not, to make flies.
So, that's a very good practice.
Okay, so I retied the body, and now we need to put on the wing, and what we use for the wing are hackle points. So we need to have a browse through some of the feathers and find a couple that are suitable for hackle points.
Is that a plain grey?
Yes,
Oh,
it's a plain grey.
Yeah.
So the hackle points are levelled up and put face to face so that they want to cling together as much as possible. And they would be tied onto the fly, again with a pinch and loop. You just got to get used to the idea of working backwards. So that gives you an idea of what we're trying to achieve.
But
I can lift the wings up, put a couple of turns behind them, and then we want to put on a hackle. Now, I tend to use a slightly different hackle. Now, these are cree feathers. You're familiar with cree, which is either brown and whites or grey, brown and whites. And if you dye them in something like dark olive, you get the most wonderful colours. I don't know if this is showing up. And if you get a more browny cree and you dye that, you get absolutely superb natural colours. So I tend to use a lot of dyed cree, as I say, just dye it in plain dark olive and select a hackle like that. So now, because the hackle is at the bend of the hook and we don't need a lot to float the fly, I only ever use the fibres on one side, and those are far too long. It used to say in the old-fashioned books, never trim hackle fibres. Now that's a load of rubbish, because actually the short stubby fibres don't penetrate the water film that readily, and they dry much more quickly with a couple of false casts. And because you don't have a lot of hackle on these flies, you need them to float for a long time. So we now have to find a way of tying this in by the point. I always tie these hackles in by the point because the best fibres are near the point of the feather. This is before the days of genetically bred capes. So we need to tie it in fairly firmly because, I'll show you why, because we want this tying thread out of the way temporarily while we wind the hackle. You might think it's a lot of fag making a reverse fly, but you know, it's like everything else in life. If you do it often enough, it becomes quite straightforward. And what am I looking for? I know what I'm looking for.
Hackle plier.
Not hackle pliers, a needle. That's it. Yeah, because, you know, it's like everything else. Once you get used to it, that's it. There was a time in my youth when I could tie 10 or 12 of these in an hour, believe it or not, but not now. So we now need to tie the hackle, and sometimes the point of a clean needle helps to keep it forward where you want it.
That's a nice little trick.
And that is enough hackle to do the job.
Don't know. Could be. Roger will tell you.
Okay. Now, what one would do in practice, and I won't do it now, is to sweep the fibres back and varnish the body, which would enhance it still further. But this at least will give you an idea of something that really does start to look like a real gun.